Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? You're watching SkepTalk on the line, and today is April 29th, 2024, and the lines are open if you would like to call with a question about God or evolution or anything of that nature. Both Forrest and I are here to answer questions, although Forrest obviously is going to be more specifically geared towards, evolution and all of those kinds of arguments and everything like that. And I'm just sort of, I'm here, and I'm appreciative. But the phone number is no, not at all. So the phone number is 720-619-2288 if you're calling in from the US, or if you are calling internationally, you can call in from the web using the link in the description below. As we all know, Forrest is here. Thank you so much, Forrest, for joining me tonight on Talk. Hi.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
And we do have at least one call that's getting screened right now, but Forrest, I just want to say, glad to be here on the show with you again. Last time I hosted, last time I was on After Dark.
Oh, I can't tell if my internet's hiccuping or if John's is.
You were hosting.
I don't know. Hey, there we go. What happened? Oh, who did?
Oh, yep. I think I did too.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to just go and assume that my internet is perfect and that everything is great on this end.
So Forrest, what have you been up to here lately?
Oh, flip, dude. A lot. I've got a first of all, I'm working on a massive charity thing. We're raising money for Doctors Without Borders by playing Tales of the Valiant, which is a TTRPG type thing. It's sort of like D&D, only better. And so we already played it. I got myself and a bunch of other content creators all went out to Denver, Colorado, which is the best Denver in Colorado. And we played like a 30-something hour game over the course of like a week, just like 6 to 8 hours a day, not counting the amount of time that we were there working, doing stuff that we had to cut or wasn't filmed. So it was more like 12-hour days. I'm just playing this ridiculous fantasy game. And I've been editing the hell out of that, and it's coming along absolutely beautifully. And so that's like the biggest thing. Also, I've got a video coming out tomorrow on my channel about how legs are actually just stupid arms, and a lot of other stuff too. So be sure to keep your eyes open for that. Then we're preparing for. I'm about to give a presentation this week over non-coding microRNAs and their use in epigenetic gene regulation. And also we've got like all these trips to the Galapagos that we're doing, these tours that we're doing this summer, and like 4 different conventions. So just my glob, dude. I'm so freaking stressed out. I've got like 80 different things on my plate at this moment, and I'm very tired. And this show is a nice little break from that, where I get to just talk about cool shit and have discussions about religion and just goof about with cool people for a minute. It's the best.
Awesome. Yeah. So next week is my goof off week because I'm actually going to Hawaii. And so that's going to be pretty cool. And we're going to do a lot of stuff out there. I'm going to swim with the sea monsters, which is just snorkeling. Doing that. I plan on getting a new tattoo. I'm a big tattoo person, if people can't tell. So I'm going to get a new tattoo while I'm out there. And then say, I'm going to visit the Jurassic Park sets that they still have.
Right on.
Yeah. So it's going to be cool. And my plan is, every time I go on vacation, my plan is to eat nothing but like seafood and local food stuff.
Nice.
I went to Italy last September last year, and we ate at some really great restaurants that were just like right there in Rome, and so that was pretty awesome.
That's excellent.
Yeah. But as far as the line goes, we do have a lot of things that are coming up on the line, which we'll get into some of the other shows and stuff that we got coming up. But we do have the Recovering from Religion charity stream this weekend. So we've got on Friday, we've got the RFR pre-show, and then on Saturday, it's going to be the full RFR charity stream. So everybody needs to come for that. I do believe we already have the live stream scheduled, so you can go and hit notify.
I think so.
On the streams, and so that you can be notified of that. Which I'm so glad I'm not going to be doing my live stream this Friday because I'm going to be preparing to get like on a 8-hour flight or something like that going out to Hawaii. So not that my show gets as many viewers as anything that the line does, but I'm glad I don't have to compete with that. But anyways, so we do have a couple of lines calling in. They're both atheists, but we would love to have some theists call in to talk about whether like any kind of evidence that you might have for God or anything like that. So. I don't know, Forrest, are you logged into the thing, or do you just want me to pick which one?
I am, and honestly, I'm down with either one of those. I don't have an issue with either one. I saw a super chat come through with a question that I'm currently looking up for. I'm preparing now for something much later.
Right. All right. Well, what we could do is we can go on ahead and take Erika. Erika, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I see you're from Tennessee, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm specifically like Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm in North Alabama, so I feel your pain.
I didn't know it meant like Tennessee. I thought it meant like titillating numbats or something. Okay, yeah, okay, I gotta get that.
I'd like that better. Fair.
Yeah.
And yeah, I live in a more densely populated area where people tend to be a little more accepting of a lot of things. So it's not too bad here or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. So what's on your mind, Erika?
Okay, sorry. I have a question. I think Forrest is probably going to be the one that'll help me with this one. I actually watched your series, The Light of Evolution, very recently, and it was really, really great. It helped me understand a lot of things. And there's one thing that it was fantastic. I'm not here to shill for you, but everybody should go watch it. It really, I believed in evolution. Now I understand it as much as a layman, I think, can understand a thing.
I left a lot out, but I tried to get all the good stuff.
Oh, fantastic stuff. No, and really, really a lot. There were things that I just didn't even have a concept of, and now I'm like, I walked away from that like, I looked at my cat and said, hi hello, family member, and I just felt really, really connected. It was just cool.
Hell yeah.
For the question,
that is exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah, and the question I have for you is one that I kind of hope will help me in my day-to-day conversations with people who either are on the fence or don't really get it. And it's one I get from them a lot, and I'm talking to people like this, is they say that DNA, they want to compare it to computer code, which is, I understand that doesn't work. But I have analogies that I use to explain things to people who, like, obviously when you're like not a professional in the field, you still try to find ways to explain things to people so that they can still kind of get it, even if they don't fully get it. And my question to you as a teacher, how do you go about explaining that to someone when they come up to you and they're like, well, you can't take out parts of the code or everything starts to break down? What do you say to those people to help them understand that gap?
Yeah, so the first and most important thing is that DNA is like a computer code. Like a computer code. And like a lot of people who say that don't actually get how analogies work. And so they're like, yeah, it's kind of like a code. that means it works in the exact same way as a computer code. And it's like, no. The thing that I would explain is that, with the computer code, I'm not a computer scientist in any way, shape, or form, but like I'm pretty darn sure that if you were to have a logical sequence of if this, then that, and then this, and then that, and blah blah blah, and you took a chunk out of the middle of that, it would kind of fall apart a little bit. With DNA, it's always going to be read in the exact same way. It's read in a sequence of 3 nucleotides called a codon, or 3 letters. I'll just say letters. It's read in a sequence of 3 letters called a codon. Each possible combination of 3 letters codes for an amino acid or for a start of a gene or the stopping of a gene or whatever. And so like that's all that it is. So if you take a chunk out or plug a chunk in or switch a chunk around or do whatever the hell, it's still the same molecule being read the same way, or rather the same type of molecule being read the same way. All you're doing is changing the amino acids that are being produced. And those amino acids fold and bind together based on basic laws of chemistry. There's no magic involved there. So you're going to change the protein that's made. And that change of protein may either be a good thing or a bad thing. Or if you change, depending on how you change the gene, it could do nothing. It could actually not change the protein as well. It could be what we call a synonymous change, where you have no actual change to the amino acids being produced. Or it might not matter, because there are certain genes that are in your body that are not expressed. That if you change this gene and the gene is never turned on and never what we call transcriptionally active, it doesn't matter how much you changed it. There's no consequence whatsoever, because you're never going to see anything. There are genes that are expressed. I was talking to John when he asked me what I was doing. I'm doing a presentation about post-transcriptional gene regulation by microRNA. And so what that is you have these tiny little sequences of RNA, which are coded for by a totally different set of genes, and they bind to mRNA, messenger RNA, and degrade it and destroy it. And so you could have a gene that is active, that is turned on, that's producing the mRNA, but before it becomes a protein, before you notice anything happens, this microRNA from a totally different gene comes in and degrades. And so it's controlling the gene, even if it is turned on. It doesn't get to do anything. And so like to compare it to a computer code and like take that seriously would mean that you can read the computer code front ways and back ways, and you can add chunks and delete chunks and switch chunks around. And sometimes the computer code is able to do something, but you don't actually see it happening in the computer because a different part of the computer came in and shut the code off. And like sometimes the code is never accessed, and sometimes the code is wrapped too tightly around a histone protein. It just like there's so many things that add on to that. And so like, you don't have to remember everything that I'm saying. It's just important to remember that, like, when you do an analogy, you can't then take every single possible consequence of that analogy. It's like saying, like, I found a pocket watch on the beach, and therefore I know the pocket watch has an owner. Therefore, if I find life, then I know that life, a maker. There was a watchmaker. So if I find life, I know there must be a life maker. This is the classic watchmaker analogy. But like, right. That's as reasonable as saying, I found this pocket watch, which is from the 1800s. Therefore, life started in the 1800s. It doesn't make any freaking sense. If you actually just think about what the analogy is, it's just an analogy. So if somebody says this to you, I would just remind them that DNA is a lot more interesting than a computer code. Come at me, computer scientists and software engineers, you freaking dweebs. So to try to compare them one to one like that just doesn't make any sense.
I feel personally attacked right now.
I work in and around computers, so I kind of understand, but I feel very much that I largely agree. And help me make sure I understood, because I feel like I understood part of that is that those that code for better use of words, those traits, they're read no matter which direction they come from. They're in a set of 3, and it's like they could be before a bunch of traits, after a bunch of traits. Doesn't really matter.
So
they're going to.
So what you have,
the same way.
So DNA is a double helix, and so you have the one side is the opposite of the other side. So you have 4 bases that make up your DNA, 4 letters, and those are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And you can just say those A, T, G, or C. A always binds to T, G always binds to C. So if you have one end of your DNA that reads A, the opposite end of the other strand of the DNA is going to read T. These strands also run anti-parallel to each other. So one of them is going this way and one of them is going this way. And so when you have a gene, this, whatever coding section of this DNA that codes for a particular thing, one of those strands is the template strand and the other is the non-template strand. And so the template strand is just a template for the actual gene. So the non-template strand is what we call the coding section. You can't read that front or back ways. It only gets read in one direction. And then the other side is just the template to that thing. And so DNA is read in the direction that it's running, what we call the 5' to the 3', which is to talk about the sugars of that make the backbone of DNA is the sugar phosphate sequence. And we say 5' or 3', we're talking about the carbons of the sugars. It's a whole fucking thing. Anyway, but it goes from one end to the other. That's the direction it's read. But the other side of the DNA going in the other direction also could have genes on it. And so one side is the coding strand and the other side is the template strand. But maybe up here in this other region, this side is the coding strand and that side is the template strand. And so, depending on which strand you're reading, you're going to be reading in a different direction and you're going to come up with different results. And you might not be actually having the same, the genes being expressed in the same ways. It's a whole, DNA is, it's so much more interesting than a series of ones and zeros. It's 4 letters, not 2. And it's those 4 letters don't compound in a binary sequence, right? Like if you had hold on a second, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10. So if I had 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1 would be the number 10 in binary, right? So you can have a string of binary numbers that can go forever, that can code for a bigger and bigger and bigger thing. In DNA, you're stuck to the 3, and those 3 are going to be different combinations that are going to code for 20-ish amino acids. And so you have a 3-letter sequence coding for 20 actual words, and depending on the combination of those words, you don't have human syntax where it's just they go in this order. It's a chemical syntax where it depends on the tail ends of those amino acids and what combine to what. A protein isn't just a string on beads on a string. That's a primary structure. It has a secondary structure where it coils into a beta or an alpha pleated sheet or a beta helix. No, alpha helix or beta pleated sheet. Fuck me. It coils up or it twists up, and then those combine into what's called a tertiary structure, which is like this globulous network. And sometimes those globulous networks also combine into what we call a quaternary structure. It's so much bigger than just ones and zeros. And so if anybody's likening it to a computer code, they're doing that either for simplicity, which is what biologists do, or they're doing it to be a dishonest hack, which is what creationists do.
I think you have done a really good job, even just now, of really explaining it to me. Just that, it's like a code, but it's also way cooler and way weirder than a code. And I definitely understand.
Code doesn't equal computer code, is all I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's information, but it's not like that kind of information either. And so the thing that leads a little bit more to the skeptical side, and it's the only follow-up question I have, and after that, y'all can get on with the next person, I'm sure. There are all these cases where people are either born with such a massive issue or health condition or deformity that either they cannot survive on their own or they just don't survive. This is a known thing. It's happened throughout history. Sometimes stillbirths, but other times it's just they were born without a brain. And obviously, creationist side of the world views that all these people are made. And to me, the kinder answer seems to be just that something went wrong when those genes or when everything was being written. And so you always hear people say, "Oh, well, this couldn't work because it would break down and we degenerate or something like that," which I don't buy into at all. But it seems like that does occasionally happen, and it follows the rule of natural selection where things just don't survive, and that's part of it, which is sad, but it's way more comforting than God put something in you without a brainstem that couldn't survive outside of the womb, and that just seems so merciless.
Because DNA and DNA gene expression are so complicated, there's lots and lots and lots of ways for things to go wrong, and they do a lot. And sometimes that can actually be a benefit. Sometimes that you actually have something good come out of that. That's the whole point of neo-Darwinian evolution is this mutation and selection mechanism. There's also there's a development side of it. Mutation in DNA is just one half of it. How development happens. Minor changes to where you put a limb bud and what that limb bud is coding for and turning into, that's kind of the name of the game of macroevolution. But yeah, what that really translates to more often than not, when we talk about things like this, it usually what we're talking about is some sort of congenital issue or genetic disease or problem. And there's a lot of those. And I think you're absolutely right. If this isn't a guided process, if there isn't a God in charge, then this is exactly what we would expect. We would expect this incredibly complex molecular machine to occasionally malfunction. And because of nobody's fault, you end up with whatever it is. You end up with a Robertsonian translocation that's going to cause something down the line. You end up with cool shit like uniparental descent. You talk about, you get 23 pairs of chromosomes from your mom, or 23 chromosomes from your mom and 23 from your dad. So you end up with 23 pairs, 46 total chromosomes. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you get actually 21 from mom and 23 or 24 from dad, or 22 from mom and 24 from dad. Because chromosome number, pick your favorite, 6 or something like that. Actually, you just got 2 copies from one parent and no copies from the other parent. And there's several ways that can happen. And that's called uniparental descent. And now you're passing that on, and it's a whole weird thing. And that's limiting the gene pool. And it's dysregulated, and it's weird, and it's messy, and it's problematic, and shit goes sideways all the time. That's exactly what you would expect if indeed there was nobody guiding this process. But if there was somebody guiding this process, and this is the result, then that dude is a mad scientist tinkering with living creatures just for the fuck of it. And that's absolutely horrific. I'm also putting into the chat right now that I just posted is a video that I did all about why the argument from complexity isn't that fucking complex. And this is a video that I did which is an hour long. The second half is about PragerU and why they're terrible. But the first half is about Stephen Meyer, who's a creationist pseudoscientist who that's his whole shtick is, computer code. You can't just randomly change computer codes and make a new game. So you can't randomly change DNA and make a new animal. And it's both of the things that you just said are demonstrably wrong. Fucking the creeper in Minecraft was because of a random code error that happened to make a cool new monster that made the game what it is today, and it's now one of the most identifiable things about the game. So it's just, if you don't think about literally anything he says at all, he makes perfect sense. But there's both of those videos there that people can watch if you like.
If you don't think about it, it makes sense, of course. I'm going to watch that video, and I'm probably going to watch the rest of the episode. I've not seen much about you, John, but I look forward to what else you have to say throughout the rest of the episode too. I know this one was a little heavy towards Forrest, but I've been watching the show for a while now. You guys are really great. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. I don't know, considering I am a computer and software engineer, I could probably speak to this a little bit. Well, yeah, that's why I felt attacked earlier when Forrest was like, all of you computer and software engineers out there. I
don't take it back.
But no. but as far as the whole DNA is code thing, I've always, I guess, shot back at it by saying, well, no, DNA is a chemical. It's, follow the laws of chemistry, which, those are natural things. So this is all a very natural process. Whereas like with computers, it's all very artificial. There's like, in order for computers today, in order to interpret all the ones and zeros, somebody had to write the architecture in order to interpret it, in order to make the computer do different things. Right. So, I mean, it's like at every level, there's human, intervention that is telling the computer how to operate and everything. Whereas, at least for me, in my point of view, the big difference between DNA and computers is that right there, because like a computer code. Because with DNA, you have natural processes that are operating it naturally without the need for magic to be inserted into it. And while there are some creationists out there that will say, oh well, yes, God put genetic diseases out there, God knitted everybody in the womb and everything like that, but he's the one that gives people these genetic diseases. But there's also another side of the creationist apologist or apologetics that actually blames humans for those things happening. Like they say that because a woman ate a fruit salad, it magically changed how physics, like our physical reality, operates. And so that is what caused like genetic diseases and everything. And so that it basically puts the onus or the blame on us. And I find that to be really kind of ridiculous to suggest that, oh, somebody ate a fruit at one piece of fruit at one point, and that apparently changed all of physical reality, like how everything operates. Because you'll get like Ken Ham, who will say, well, no, God didn't do that, we did it. We are the ones that caused genetic diseases because man fell from God's grace. And so those are just that's just another way that apologists could take it. Of course, you could go the low bar Bill Craig way and just say, well, God is all powerful and he can decide to give somebody some kind of genetic disease if he wants to. And I mean, if God commands genocide, that's perfectly fine too. I mean, you've definitely got those, but you also got the ones that want to blame us for doing it.
I also have talked about that in an episode of Reacteria. Matt Powell is one of those who says, well, yeah, because sin causes mutations and that causes diseases and really stupid shit. So here is a video that I just post in there where I talk about exactly that and actually do the math on the dumb shit that he's saying and explain why you would have to expect that humans at this point in our evolutionary history would have literally 3 genes in our whole body. No, it was like 3 nucleotides. It was 3 letters or something of our DNA left after all of the mutations that he says that we would have to have had.
I think I've actually watched that video like earlier today because I opened it on a side window and it immediately was fully like the bar was all red and I was like, I think I've seen this one. But I wanted to say that John actually pointed out something really, really big there for me for a moment. That is that when we compare DNA to code, the mistake we're almost making, which isn't a mistake, it's a good analogy. It makes a lot of sense. But if the creationists are the theists in this case, often, not always, but most often, is making the case for that and saying, well, this is why it wouldn't work. This is actually a point where you can point towards the watchmaker problem again of, well, you're pointing at something we made. It is artificial. We did design it. It's how we make computers work. And what's funny is with different operating systems and obviously different coding structures, we can change even the basic rules of how that works. So it doesn't work to fully compare the two because you are, once again, it's the same as the awful Ray Comfort shit where he points at or my favorite was the banana. Of course, everyone loves that one. But when he points to the watch and he says, you don't think there was you don't think it just made itself, but he never points to a tree or the grass or anything that did in fact make itself. And I think that's what I'm going to use going forward is just like, here's like, this is a good sample and understanding of how we can get there. But this is the rest. Yeah. The rest is that it's way more messy. It's way more biological, is a way to put it, I suppose. It's way more chemicals and complicated natural laws than it is the laws we made for computers to work. So I really want to thank you both, because I feel like even though I don't know John, I'm now going to have to start following him, because he brought a lot into that too.
Yeah, dude.
Sometimes I'm okay.
Thank you both so much. I look forward to the rest of the show.
All right.
Thanks
We'll
so
see
much.
you later there, Erika.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that's one of those things. Like I know I talked for a while, but I was trying to be succinct, because like I could talk for that like all day. Because like the thing that people don't realize is like genes don't just exist in a vacuum. Like there's a whole regulatory network where one gene controls the production of another gene, which controls the production of another gene, which controls the production of another. And like you have to go down this huge, complicated dance to get to where one gene actually happens. And some genes, they're going to do like a variety of things, or what we call pleiotropic. So they're going to have a variety of effects from that one. And some traits are polygenic. They don't just come from one. You need several genes all working in tandem to make something happen. Like hair color. It's not just, what type of melanin am I producing? It's not just how much melanin am I producing? Is that melanin being deposited, and where is it being deposited, and how much, and like how many of the type of melanocyte cells that make the shit are in the right places? Like there's so many steps that go into it, and people like to pretend that it's just like this switch. Like you just this hair color, that hair color, and it's the same thing with this. You either have arms or don't. It's like no, there's so much more, and it's so much more interesting than that.
Yeah, and I mean, like as far as comparing it to computer code goes, like I can't think of a single situation I've ever been in where like you can manipulate like just one line or one particular thing, and then you get like something totally different happen. Most likely, if you change it, you're going to break it. And like a big difference in some coding languages is like currently I work in Kotlin, which is a programming language that's primarily used for like Android devices. But the big difference there is that like in C++, something we're all taught at every level, I guess, of college. But basically, a semicolon at the very end is how you denote that there's an end, right? Whereas in Kotlin, you don't. It's just like you go to a new line, and that's it. One line is one line of code. And so, like, I can't think of a single situation in like genetics, which you might be able to correct me on this, but I can't think of a single thing where it's like, oh, well, we changed out, this code for the for stopping, the protein or whatever. We swapped that out for something totally different. I don't know. Does that ever happen in genetics there? Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
So you've got So you've got like I said, it's coded in sequences of 3, and so you do have there's several stop codons. So TGA, TAA, and TAG. All if I remember right, they all code for stop. And so if that codon sequence comes up, boom, it's over. And so like say for example you have TAA, right? If you have TAC sitting there, then it's just coding for another amino acid, and it's going to keep reading down the line. One single letter change now to change it to TAA. Now you've completely stopped. You've truncated this protein production. Is what we call a nonsense mutation, where it just ends it, and now all the rest of that gene is lost. And you also have start codons. You have like a TATA box where you have like this is where the gene is going to begin. And so those things absolutely exist, and that those also have room for change, because before the actual beginning of a gene, you have a promoter sequence where you have like you could have silencer sequences where you could have certain proteins bind that stop the protein from being read. You could have enhancer sequence where you have different proteins called transcription factors come in to like kick the protein sequence transcription off. All of this is dependent on whether or not the gene is actually accessible. So like half the point of epigenetics is like you have your DNA, and that's wound around these little proteins called histones. and it makes this thick rope called chromatin, and that's what makes your chromosomes. If that is wound up really tight into what we call heterochromatin, then it's not transcriptionally active. You can't unwind it enough to actually read the genes to make the things happen. It has to be a loose beaded string network called euchromatin, and that's what we're. And so, like, depending on whether or not you can actually reach the damn gene, depending on whether or not the gene is able to be read, depending on whether or not the gene is complete, depending on whether or not you have, again, microRNA coming in later on to degrade the mRNA that you produce, depending on whether or not you have receptors for whatever protein or hormone or whatever the hell it is you're producing. Like, there's so many steps. And yeah, there's on and off. There's like start and stop sequences, but those might not matter. Yeah, dude. It's fucking.
Well, you see, that's the big difference between computer code and DNA is that, you know, the thing that ends your line on a line of code, that's what it is. Like, that's what it does all the time. Every single time it does that. So, I mean, it's just, I feel like there's so many differences between computer code and like DNA. You could probably write a book about how it's not like, it's like DNA is not computer code. You know, I feel like you could definitely do that.
I do also want to,
well,
if we have the time,
go ahead.
There's one person here in the chat who sent in a thing saying that God loves us, and when they were encouraged to call in, they said, "Oh, they don't have anything prepared. I just want you to know God is here for you." If that person is still listening, I want you to know that what you said there, God loves you, I personally find that to be a really evil, shitty thing to say, and I've talked about why on this show, so you don't have to have anything prepared. We could just talk about what you believe and why. That's an option. And we could talk about how your beliefs sound to us and why we certainly don't want anything to do with it. That's an option. So if you'd like, you're welcome to actually call in and have a civil conversation with people who disagree with you, or you can continue just posting passive-aggressive nonsense in the chat and refusing to actually have a civil discussion about it. That's your choice. But the lines are open for you if you'd like. 720-619-2288.
Right. I find that a lot of theists, they just want to be able to preach at people. Like they want to be unequivocally heard and just have people absorb it, listen to them, and then that's it. Like, that's just they don't like pushback at all, is what I've found. Before we head on into our next caller, I do want to reemphasize the RFR charity stream this weekend. We've got the pre-show on Friday and then the actual charity stream on Saturday. So those should be scheduled up already. So you could just go over there, hit notify. You'll be notified when those streams start. But I also want to promo the Patreon for the line here. It's patreon.com/call the line. If you want to help support the stuff that we're doing here on the line. And we do have a lot of shows that are coming up, like tomorrow night at 6 p.m. We've got Chewed Gum with Eve Was Framed and Alyssa. And then on Wednesday, it's the Hang Up with Matt and Daryl Ray. And then Thursday, we've got Takis with Josie and Steph. And then on Sunday, we've got Matt and Eric, and then Forrest and Paulogia that night. So we've got a lot of great stuff. And next week's SkepTalk is actually Aron Ra and Adair. So we've got a lot of great stuff that's coming up on the show. And then we've also got the podcast here on the line. It's hosted by Jimmy. Each episode, there's at least one a week. He calls another creator and has an impromptu discussion, and then gives them a quiz, which if they ace, they win a prize on behalf of a patron. So the episodes first go out to No. Episodes first go out to patrons. The episodes first go out to patrons, and then and only patrons can win prizes and leave comments, which are read on the air. Free patrons and Discord only patrons get the show 2 weeks later, and then YouTube channel members get it on a delay. There's already 2 episodes out with Apostasy and Eve Was Framed, and it's the greatest podcast alive, apparently, according to my show notes. All right, so we do have a theist in the call-in queue, so I think that we're gonna jump to the theist real quick. That's Elijah. Yep. What's up, Elijah? How you doing?
Hey guys, how you two doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Never had a bad day, man.
Okay. All right. So my question is, can you guys give me advice on how to respond to apologists when I ask them about it's just God's seemingly immoral acts in the Old Testament? For example, when God's I think he condoned rape in the Old Testament, and when he condoned slavery, condoning the beating of your slaves, stuff like that. Because I was emailing, I tried to email Matt Slick, but somebody else responded instead, because I guess he hired somebody to answer his emails because he can't get to all of them. And the guy basically, instead of him, usually exegeting scripture like they usually do when I ask questions, instead he dodged the question and said, "What is your universal moral standard for your morals and all that stuff?" And so he was basically, I guess, trying to say, how can I judge God's alleged immoral acts if I don't have a universal moral standard, and where am I getting it from? So how do I deal with disingenuous apologists like that?
John, you want to go first? I got plenty.
Sure. Well, typically, I mean, the reason why they're trying to dodge it and bring up stuff like that is to basically throw you a red herring, and I guess just distract you from the question that you're actually asking. So, I mean, the first thing that I would do is just stay on them about actually answering your questions. Sometimes that can be hard because, like, with the whole what's your ultimate moral foundation or whatnot, how can you judge God or whatever, you could be tempted to go down that path. And I would probably bring up to that and be like, well, not even Christianity has an absolute moral foundation, because there's so many different times that you can point out in history where Christianity has changed its preaching on a number of issues, like you could point to slavery or women's rights, LGBTQ rights, with the more progressive Christian denominations that exist out there. So, I mean, you could definitely go down that rabbit hole if you wanted to, but I mean, then the apologist just succeeded in throwing you off the track and allows him to not answer the question. And so I would just try to stick to the question, get them to answer it, because they're going to tell you a few things whenever they answer questions like that. It's either they're going to show you that they don't actually care about people, like they pretend like I feel like a lot of apologists and a lot of people in general pretend to care about their fellow man, but in reality they just care about satisfying God and his needs. And sometimes they'll directly tell you that too. But they'll tell you that, or they'll just tell you how crappy of a person they are. Like, oh yeah, that God totally does that, and it's perfectly fine for God to do that, or God to prescribe that, because we can't know God's mind. We can't know the reasons why God would prescribe these things, and therefore that makes it okay. And so they basically just lay out exactly how shitty their theology is, in my opinion, and how shittily they've rationalized their belief in this God. And so my biggest thing is just stay on the question. Definitely hound them about answering the question that you originally asked. And I think that if you can get them to play on your field when you're asking them the questions instead of allowing them to control the conversation, I feel like that can really help you get somewhere.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is having a theist dodge a question and give some shitty, dishonest answer to try to derail to something they're more comfortable with. That's like half of the content of this show. Is we have people call in and then tell us, oh, well, if you can't tell me every single little bit about exactly how life formed, then I guess the only other reasonable thing is magic. And we're like, hey, that's not how science or thinking works. And they're like, well, I mean, where do you get a moral compass from? And it's like, nobody's asking you that. That is every single damn show we do. I think John gave great advice. Just hold their feet to the fire. Why are you dodging it? Just answer this actual question. Because sometimes there's a question that requires another question to answer properly, or that requires some context that's reasonable. That happens from time to time. But jumping to like, where do you get your morals from, certainly isn't, a reasonable jump. And so like, if I guess the follow up would be like, either answer this question or explain to me why what you're doing is going to help us answer this question. Because by the end of this conversation, we need to have answered this exact question. And I don't want to take 45 minutes to answer 30 other questions in order to answer this one. We need to actually have a track record, or like a game plan to answer just this one question. This is the only question we're going to talk about today. Do you have an answer to this question or not? You know what I mean? Like that's so important to do. Another thing to do is, to call it out when you see it. Not even if you're not going to try to come back. Calling out the fact that you're bringing this other thing up is also a problem for me. The fact that you would think that I don't have a moral compass without a God is equally weird. The fact that you think that God is an objective standard for morality, when if he's a thinking being and is giving us the standard, then by definition, that would be a subjective morality. That would still be moral relativism, no matter how you slice that. So, like, how are you going to get away from that? Like, even if what you were saying now was a good argument, it would still be a bad argument. And I think that's a really important thing to do as well, if that's the direction you want to take it. There's no one right answer here, but I think making sure to hold their feet to the fire and not being put off by the idea of not allowing them to dominate the conversation and making sure the conversation stays on track. Such a really, really powerful thing to be able to do.
Elijah, I'm just kind of curious. It said in the show notes, it says that you're a theist. So like with Matt, the Matt Slick's person that answers his emails, his assistant, I guess, saying, well, where do you get your morals from? My guess is that you would reply back and say, well, I get them from God, same place you do. So I'm just wondering how that would actually affect like your response to him.
Oh, well, actually, I'm a agnostic theist, and I've said some things to him, and I was like criticizing the Bibles, and so I think that maybe he was kind of realizing that I may not be an actual believer, and so if I remember correctly, because this was a few months ago, I had said to him. I had said to him that, well, if you need God to tell you what is moral, morally good and morally bad, then I think there's something wrong with you, because I know what's good and what's not. I have sympathy for people. I'm not a psychopath. So. Yeah, I had said those things to him, and so yeah, that was my response to him, on that stuff.
Okay, that's a good start. Yeah, dude. I think I'm pretty sure I remember you. I think I remember you calling in from time to time. I think you're currently. You were at one point, a little bit more strong in theism, and now you're like in the process of deconstruction, and you're like, you just said, you're talking about being an agnostic theist. Is that, am I thinking about the right person?
No, that must be another Elijah, because I called only twice in the past, and I never actually spoke with you before.
Okay, forgive me for confusing you with somebody. I could have sworn that I talked to you a different time. Okay, cool. So you're calling yourself an agnostic theist now. Is there a reason why, if I could ask, you're deferring over to the theist side? Because it seems like agnosticism, you can be an agnostic theist, that's the thing. But like, I'm wondering why, if the answer is ultimately I'm not sure, or I don't know for sure, or whatever, why you would default then to the supernatural explanation.
Oh, you mean the supernatural explanation of why the universe exists? Is that what you're talking about?
or just that a God exists in general. I maybe explanation isn't the word I should have chosen there. The supernatural possibility. If supernatural events aren't the supernatural world is something that we don't actually have any evidence for or really serious reason to believe in. And as an agnostic, I think you'd probably maybe agree that like this is something that's kind of up in the air, that you don't have a strong evidence for, that you don't have a reason, like, and yet you're still sticking with it. So usually when people use the term agnostic atheist, they're saying like, I don't believe there's a God, but I'm not saying absolutely for sure there's no such thing. There's no way, because that position would also require some degree of evidence. But what you're saying here is, I don't have a reason to believe. I'm not saying that there absolutely certainly is a God, but I'm pretty sure there is. That's what I'm hearing. And I'm just curious to know like where that's actually coming from. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
Yeah, I'm actually like in the middle. I believe that there's a possibility that God exists, but I just am unsure because I do believe in the Big Bang. I believe in abiogenesis. I accept evolution. I accept all the science. I used to be a young Earth creationist, but I'm no longer that anymore. I've come to accept the science, and I actually do find that abiogenesis and evolution is so much more fascinating and interesting than God poofed all the animals into existence by magic. I like abiogenesis and evolution so much better. It's so much more fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I strongly agree. I'm just curious to know is why you still use the title of theist then.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, could you maybe boil it down to like, what's one thing that keeps you from swapping from theist to atheist?
I think one reason is because it was ingrained in me as a child, and so like it's just stuck with me ever since, and it's just that I always think about what if there is a God, what if there is a heaven and a hell, stuff like that, I just like to think that maybe there is a possibility that it does exist, and we just don't have the technology to like I guess discover other dimensions or open a portal, stuff like that. So that's why I just leave it at that, because we don't really have technology to open a portal to see if other beings are out there in other dimensions.
I feel like I don't mean to like force a label on you or anything like that, but the way that you describe it sounds more like that pure agnostic sort of position where you're like a lot of people like to say, well, I'm agnostic, as a way to say, well, I don't know if a God exists and I don't know if I believe in a God, because it seems like saying that you're theist seems to indicate that you do believe in God. Maybe you don't know that God exists, but you believe in one. But you seem to be far more in the pure agnostic position than like any kind of theistic position.
Which whatever label you want to use is fine. I think what John is saying is accurate though. Like I'm not trying to tell you what you believe, dude. Like please don't think that I'm trying to like talk down to you and be like, actually, just what you're describing sounds an awful lot like atheism, with just kind of an open door to like, but like shit, dude, maybe there's some stuff because we don't know everything. And I feel like most atheists who are honest with themselves, and I feel like most atheists on this channel would feel the exact same way. Like, I'm not ruling out that there could be some sort of a God thing out there, some extra dimensional being, some super alien civilization that I wouldn't know the difference between that and a God, like something that I might call a God and be mistaken. There's a million different things out there that are absolutely possible. I just don't have any evidence for any of that or any real logical reason to believe in any of that at this point. So at the time being, I'm just saying I don't really know. It's kind of like, the common thing that I say is like, there's either, if I say there's an elephant behind this bookshelf, You can either say yes there is or no there isn't. Both of those require evidence. Or you can just say, I don't believe you. And until you give me a reason to believe you, I don't fucking believe you. And I'm not, and that's kind of where we're at as atheists, is like, I'm not saying yes and I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I don't believe you. And that's, it sounds like that's what you're saying too. But again, I'm not trying to label you or tell you what you, but does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sick, man. Well, yeah, dude, if you want to call back, I hope that you call back with a question someday and the label says atheist or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go on ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I do have a question though, because I am interested in seeing if paleontology is a career that I want to pursue. I do plan on volunteering at the local museum that's here in my city to see if that's something that I want to do. Is there like any advice that you would give me, and also I know I need to like study biology and I think geology too, right? And is there other things I need to know, like do I need to study math or like anything like that as well?
Yeah. How old are you? Or what like age range or grade are you in?
Oh, I'm actually 29 years old, and I'm in community college at the moment.
Okay, cool. You're like a sophomore, freshman. Like, where are you at?
Oh, freshman.
Okay, perfect. No, there's no bad time to start. That's excellent. Yeah. Okay, so I'm actually doing a second master's right now in biomedical sciences with a focus on paleontology, because here in Oklahoma we have the paleontology department is actually roped into the biomed department. So like I'm taking all these clinical anatomy and pathophys courses that are taught by people who dig up dinosaurs and shit. And I'm actually going on a paleo dig at the end of this month. We're going to go out to West Oklahoma and dig up camel fossils. So I'm so glad you asked me this question. It's awesome. So start, like, biology is this fucking awesome thing where every single class you take on it, they're going to teach you some really cool stuff. And then the next class is going to be about how all of that is wrong. And then you learn a new thing. And that's the best part about it. And so like what I encourage you to do, start with like Intro to Bio for majors. Because the non-majors class is the exact same thing, just like with a little bit less detail, and it's just not worth it in my opinion. I've taken both in my career because I did an education degree before I got a biology degree, so I've taken both of them. They were the same fucking class. I just learned the number of microtubules in a flagellum on one, and just that they exist in the other. So get a bio for majors course under your belt, and see if there's a specific part of it that really sticks with you, that really makes you happy. If you want to get into paleontology, you're gonna need to be good at bones, and identifying bones. So like osteology is a good idea. Like for example here, I don't know if you can see your screen at this moment, but like if I'm pulling something up out the ground, right? And I happen to see that it has like this little truncated end on it there with a little divot in there, and it's a long bone, and it's got this little divot. I know it's a fucking radius, you know what I mean? Like I can tell you with it, and if it's got this little hooky do right here, like you can see that little hook there on the end of the ulna bone there. I know it's going to articulate with something, and I can go find the rest of it. So like learning to read bones and understand bone markers, like where you can see muscle attachments, and like the density of a bone tells you how much that bone was used, and like what kind of pressure it was put under. You can find muscle attachments, how big those muscle attachments are. It tells you like how big the muscle was. If you can like start to pick up on this stuff, that's going to help you a ton if you get familiarized with that stuff. Also, if you're talking about paleontology, depends on if you're looking for plants, animals, what it may be. Most people like to study, big old megafauna from back in the day, big giant animals. And so like getting a little bit of history in zoology, definitely you want to study some evolution, and understand like how different things come about and like what the life history of the world is. I have never in my freaking life taken a geology class. It is the science that I know the least about, probably. And so I have a team of people that work with me that do that. There's a guy who is an anatomist who teaches doctors anatomy, who is the best goddamn geologist that any of us have worked with, and just knows everything. He can just read a rock and tell you where it's from, what it's made of, how old it is. It's as if it had it printed on it. It's insane. So you don't have to know everything. You just get good at the stuff that you're excited about. And if you want to do paleontology, there's a few prerequisites. You got to know how to read bones. And you got to know what different animals look like, and how to identify, like, okay, it has this many bones in the jaw, it has this many bones in the skull, it has this thing is shaped this way, so it's probably an amphibian, or it's shaped this way, so it's probably a mammal, or whatever it may be. Those things are really handy. And also, you talk about volunteering. That's a great way to get started. Here at OSU, we do that. You can volunteer to come in and help scratch out, like sift through dirt and find little fossils in there. And that means you get to talk to the people who do that shit for a living and like learn from them. Just the advice that I always give everybody is that you need to learn what interests you most in the most irreverent and unorthodox way possible. So don't let anybody tell you got to learn this, and this in this order. I encourage you to bounce around, be weird, and get excited about something, and let that take you on a bunny trail after bunny trail after bunny trail after bunny trail. Hop on Google scholar.google.com, and type in evolution of whatever the hell you're interested in, and find a couple of things about it. And when you hit a wall where, like, I don't know what this word is, you go research that, and then you come back to the paper, and then you read a little bit further, and you don't know what the fuck that is, and you research that, and you read a little bit further. Like, that's the whole point of, like, an undergrad degree. So yeah, those are some of just advices from me. And I know those are all over the place, but I hope it helps.
Yeah, that helps out a lot. And I just want to add that the animals that I look forward to studying in these courses is like because I really like the Tyrannosaurid of species, and I also like the different Spinosaurus species like Suchomimus, Baryonyx, stuff like that.
Hell yeah. I work with some people who work on those right now. There's a guy as a PhD student who works in the lab that I'm doing research in, working in the middle of, that's his whole field. He works on Tyrannosaurids, and can talk to you all about every different species of Tyrannosaurus, and like everything that's even kind of related to them, and every little bit about how they moved and how they worked and what they are. Just amazing stuff, dude. So, like, yeah, if that's what you're excited about, I guarantee there is a nerd who is currently teaching a university course in that who would love to just geek out about it with you and kind of give you a game plan on what you need to be doing next. If you're at community college now, like I said, start with just get an intro to bio for majors under your belt. And it's going to teach you the basics of how DNA works, the basics of what a cell is and how cells work, the basics of ecology. It's going to help you put life in context. And that's really important because people think that life is this magical, crazy, weird thing. And as you learn little bits of it, it sounds that way more and more. But like a good Intro to Bio for Majors class is going to help you like put the pieces together to see life as a functional thing. And that's why usually the first lesson is what the hell life is. Because here's a fun secret for you. We don't have a definition. There's 7 different qualifications that a thing has to meet in order for us to call it alive. And some of those qualifications can't possibly apply to one individual thing. So it's just fucking up in the air. And also viruses aren't technically alive, but do some of the things and don't seem to give a fuck what we think. And so it's like that's a great place to start and just kind of get a picture of what life actually is and what it does. And then from there, you can start building on like, okay, what are the possibilities and what are the mechanisms that life uses and like where does it come from? Where does it go? What does it do? What's it all about? And pretty soon, by the end of your undergrad, you'll start to be asking questions about the things that we don't fucking know. And that's where life gets really, really interesting.
Okay, great. Sounds good. And I would also like to ask just one more question. So sure. I saw a video once of Matt Slick think he was on his radio show talking to somebody, if I remember correctly. But he had said, because he's a younger creationist, and so he had said, science is always changing, and when he said that, I already knew the reason why he brought that up is because he doesn't trust, I guess, evolution and abiogenesis, because he says science is always changing, and so I guess in his mind, maybe someday a new discovery will come about that, the Earth is only 8,000 years old, and Adam and Eve did exist, stuff like that. So how would you respond to a younger creationist who would say something like that? Science is always changing.
Yes, it is, and you want it to. That's the best part about science, is that it changes. It gets better over time. So like, science doesn't change in the way that, like, we all decided today that the Earth is actually 300 years old. Never mind on all this, you know what I mean? It's just the way that science changes is that we discover new information, and then we incorporate that new information into our understanding of the universe. And so like, that's the whole point of like a theory. When people talk about theories, they use the word colloquially to mean kind of just a guess. I have a theory about where my sock went in the dryer. I have a theory about why my car won't start, whatever like that. But like, an actual scientific theory is a functional explanation for observed natural phenomena that is backed by all the best evidence we have and contradicted by nothing. And that doesn't mean that theories won't change. Theories do change when new evidence comes out. When we learn something new that doesn't fit into the current framework, then either the framework changes to accommodate it, or the framework is thrown out and we take everything we know and we build a new framework. And so a great example of that is like fossils, for example. We used to believe in this, what was called the Great Chain of Being, which was this hierarchy of all matter and all life, from rocks all the way up to humans, all the way up to plants, other animals, humans, angels, God on top, and we believe that everything exists exactly as it has always existed. Back in, like, I believe it was the 1700s when we realized what fossils were. It completely turned the world of science upside down, because we were like, oh, fuck, there were things here that aren't here anymore. The idea of extinction was an extremely controversial, sacrilegious, world-changing idea. But now it's irrefutable, and that's science changing. We encountered something that we could not accommodate for in any other way besides changing our minds. And so we did. And the reason why that's awesome, you can demonstrate it a few ways. Here's one. You're calling us on a phone right now and talking to us over the internet. Guess how much of that shit would work if science didn't change? Zero. None of it. There's no way, because we had to learn, oh shit, it turns out light can do this other stuff. And it turns out that if we take a piece of silicon, I'm not a fucking electrical anything. If you take some silicon and some copper and hit it with a hammer and piss on it just right, it can fucking call people on that's how cell phones work. That's the whole point. And not only that, but like airplanes, vaccines, like the best things in our universe, agriculture. Without evolution, you don't have agriculture. You don't have modern medicine. You don't have so many things. Without fucking our understanding of science, you can't get on an airplane. Do you want an airplane that's fucking powered by prayers and chanting, or you want one that's powered by fucking engines, right? And the reason why we're not flying around the same biplanes that we're flying around in, back when the Wright brothers cramped one out, is because science changed, yo. And so like, I had a guy fucking who was an eye surgeon. He was an eyeball surgeon who was a fundamentalist Christian who said that shit to me. He was like, yo, well, science is always changing. I'm like, dude, do you want to use 1600 science to cut up an eyeball? No, you want to use the best possible modern science to do that. And so like, that's the thing. If you're fucking frustrated and saying, well, I can't trust science because it's always changing, don't go to the doctor. Because you're gonna want them to fucking drain your humors and bleed you with leeches to try to cure a plague because you have too much fluid. Because that's what we used to believe in the fucking 18th century. And it was dumb as all hell. And like, now we know better. And so like, yeah, just that's the whole thing, dude, is yes, science changes, That's why science works. And all the same creationists who bitch about science changing are the same creationists who will complain about, well, Piltdown Man and Nebraska Man were they were hoaxes that people, evolutionists, thought were real human links and that they actually weren't. Yeah, you know what corrected that? More science. We checked and we found out that it wasn't right, and we threw out that old data and rebuilt our worldview based on good actual data, because that's the point. I'll talk about this for a long time, Elijah. I apologize. I'm going to go on several tangents. I'll leave it there, though. That's what I would say to that.
So I just want to preface by saying, please, nobody piss on your phones. That's not how phones work.
You fucking live.
But I would, playing off of what Forrest has been saying, I would come back with the fact that religion changes, like Christianity. If you're talking to a Christian, their religion, their theology has changed so much since it was first conceived in the early first century, that you really, like, if you want to bring up, oh, science changes, it's like, well, yeah, but science is honest about it changing. Like, science readily emphasizes change and incorporating new information, whereas religion bullshits you about it. Religion will sit there and be like, nope, we have the ultimate moral foundation, or we have the ultimate amount of knowledge because it's been given to us by God, and that's just what it is. And it's like, oh, really? Okay. Well, 1865 comes around. It's like, but we've got new revelation that apparently it's not okay to own another person as property. There's that. And then later on, it's like, women are people too. We figured that out now. God, actually, Jesus was a feminist. Okay, that's what we've been able to determine now with our perfect interpretation of it. And then, like, later it changes. It's like, maybe we shouldn't kill LGBTQ persons. Like, I mean, religion and theology in religion changes, so much. But the good thing, if you were to compare it to science, is that science changes in very predictable ways because we get new information. Religion changes based on the whim of different people that have different opinions, and then everybody decides, oh, I like this opinion better than I like that opinion, and so now that is what the opinion of God is. And so it's like there's no structure to it. It's really just, society is changing this way. If we want our religion to survive, then we have to figure out some way for God to be like, oh yeah, that's what I meant. And so it's just, it's very kind of haphazardly trailing behind like societal norms and everything like that. It just boils down to religion bullshits you, while science is very honest about the fact that it changes with new information. And so that's kind of where I see that line going. But anyways, Elijah, really appreciate you calling in. We hope that you call in again in the future. But we do have several more calls to get to. So very much appreciate you calling in.
All right. Thank you so much for taking my call. This is a very fun conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Bye. All right. Well, just to piss on your phone. Listen, okay. Just to reiterate, we do have just to reiterate, we do have the charity streams this weekend. We've got a pre-show going on Friday, Saturday. We have the actual charity stream, so definitely call in for that. I'm not going to be on there, although I did record a couple of videos for them to play, promoting RFR and all the good work that they do over there at RFR. And so I'll be there in spirit, but I will definitely be in my first class pod, though, as I travel across the Pacific to get to Hawaii. So I'm not going to be there, but I'll be there in spirit.
Brag more.
So Forrest, you can see the calls. Is there anyone that really kind of grabs your attention? I'm hoping that the anonymous one that's getting screened right now actually makes it through, but is there any of the ones that we currently have that strike you good?
Honestly, I don't. I think there's a couple of them that waiting for a little while that look okay. But like, there's a couple of them also that I feel like we would just go, yes, we agree, and that would be the whole call. So I don't know.
All right. Well, let's actually jump to Michael, who wants to talk about Catholic wizards. I mean, that's me paraphrasing what it actually says, but what's up there, Michael?
Hey, Eric, hey, Forrest, how are you?
Really well, dude. How are you?
I'm good. I was hoping you were going to say that I was from Virgin Assholes today, but you didn't.
I'm not reading the calls, otherwise I probably would have.
Oh. Anyway, I called in today to discuss some of my former upbringing, as well as something that has kept me theist for a while, until about, I want to say, middle school, like 5 or 6 years ago. And that is this whole thing, with this huge Catholic, which was my upbringing, with this emphasis on miracles. So, and the very thing was, and this is this is a little close to home, 2011, when my grandmother passed away, there was this whole thing in the room with this flower wilting or something. And my parents got a picture of it, and that was my proof. But the problem is, it's anecdotal, right? There's no way to
also hooray, this god fixed a flower. Also, a lot of children starved to death,
Yeah. And plus, well, it's nothing necessarily to do, with my, grandmother, or over, however many, close to 20 years ago. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe half that. I can't do the math in my head. But then there's also these other crazy ones. I don't know if you've heard of the Eucharist bleeding miracles.
Yeah.
That have been reported. So, and so here's the other thing. I'm a college student, and I know I've been listening to the past few calls, and I've just been okay, we can make some connections. But yeah, so I actually do try to talk to most of the theists on campus, just to practice street epistemology and stuff like that. And so when we went, and so we got lunch, I went with, this was a Catholic campus ministry this time, and these whole things were their these miracles were their proof.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to sit there and refute it, and here's my evidence. And so it's just and I don't even go to a Christian school or anything. This is a public school. We are in the South. But it just doesn't make any sense. How do we present critical thinking to these people?
That is the Dandel misery of it. I was gonna say that's what the issue I have when people say can I believe in science and God? And it's yeah, sure, but you are deciding that you are going to have a different way of thinking for this one thing than you do for everything else. And so when you have a Catholic school, sometimes Catholic schools actually have really great education system, and they actually teach you a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And also there's magic. And that's the big thing, is you are deciding that you are going to, you're going to have a totally rational, clear, critical mind where you really evaluate evidence on everything. But also it could just be magic, and you just have that as an option. And it's I don't understand how people don't see that as harmful, but that's just me. I think you are probably on the same page.
I gotcha.
Yeah. And with the whole I guess the miracle as their evidence thing, what I typically try to do is I try to get them to think sort of outside their faith a little bit, and try to get them to do some compare and contrasting. And I've done this with there was a couple of Mormon guys that came by that was trying to convince me of space Jesus, and I just tried to get them to, yeah, I tried to get them to really compare their religion with people of other faiths, like Muslims or anybody else. And I think that it could definitely work here in this situation because there's not just Christian miracles, right? There's miracles of various kinds out there, and you could look up a few from different religions where these miracles supposedly happen, and you could bring them up. It's like, well, these people say this, so that's a miracle by their standard. How do you know that that's either not a miracle or that whatever other kind of excuse that they could come up with, and try to get them to differentiate it. Of course. Go ahead. Did we lose Michael? Oh, hey.
No, I'm here. It was like I was like going to talk, and I think there was like some awkward silence while waiting for a delay or something.
Nice.
But no. So I wanted to get to like a point. Sorry, roommate just walked in. So like I wanted to get to a point. Oh, I know. I'm still in the dorms. I got an apartment next year.
Good for you.
But and these people try to claim that like these major, like scientific institutions like are actually like examining these miracles. And I'm like, well, how come like, like if this was true, right? Wouldn't like these be reported on the mass media? Their response is no, because, and I want to paraphrase, I don't want to quote them here, but like it would freak people out, or there would be like all these crises as a result of it. Like, does that make sense?
I mean,
yeah,
but I could think of several different newscasts where they've talked about Jesus appearing on toast and it being called a miracle. So I mean, I really don't think, especially down here in the South, I'm not sure. It says you're from Virginia. I believe that's VA.
It's still the South.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I feel like the newscasters are definitely fine with being like, a miracle happened today. Susie grew her toe back after she cut it off with tweezers. I feel like, they wouldn't have a problem, talking about that. So I don't think that's the reason. A lot of them like to, create excuses for why more people aren't talking about it or whatnot. Because I don't know if it's just that they can't handle the fact that like serious, educational institutions are not going to entertain magic from like a scientific point of view, like doing studies on it and everything like that. Like it would be really weird for a educational institution that is, teaching science or at least investigating something on a scientific basis to be like, yep, we're trying to figure out whether or not incantations can produce real stuff in reality. Like, I really don't think that would be the big reason why not.
And that's really interesting because, if we could make efforts to like prove Christianity, like if universities could, that could mean like a lot. But like, I hypothesize they're not going to get anywhere near that.
Right. And I mean, they have done studies like on prayers and things of that nature. Like, I believe the study I'm thinking about was a study done on heart surgery patients. They had different groups, your control group and then another group, and then they increased the amount of prayer or the amount of people that were praying for them and everything like that. And so I mean, they do like studies like that on occasion. But and I know another one that I've heard, it was either Matt or somebody else on the show mention it, but they've actually got like the whole out of body experience experiment where they write something up where nobody can see it, and if you truly do float out of your body.
Talking about that.
Yeah. And so like they do tests like that, and they've never come back as magic. Like, there's never been a scientific study that's been done where it's come back like, oh, yep, definitely magical stuff happened here. like from an actual magical perspective. So, but
Yeah, and it's
anyways,
also like it's also like a
Go ahead.
common sentiment here that it's also like a common sentiment here that that the supernatural and the natural like science world can coexist.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
I mean, I suppose they can. I mean, and I mean, Forrest, probably surrounded with those types of people all day, like, theists, scientists who are really good scientists, like,
well, yeah,
to me though.
The weird thing about that is that as soon as you can actually investigate these supernatural things, and you figure out like how they operate or figure out what they are, they immediately become part of the natural world. So they are no longer supernatural. And so, like saying that supernatural and the natural world can exist at the same time, it's kind of like, I mean, I guess from like a hypothesis sort of view of it, maybe you could say that, but like as soon as you actually start testing the supernatural, as soon as you figure out what that is, it becomes natural. And so they practically can't coexist because, anything that you figure out is going to be part of the natural world.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right.
Well, thank you so much for calling in, Michael. And yeah, well, I believe both Forrest and I definitely do not like the whole miracles as evidence kind of argument. It's pretty.
Not a fan.
Not a fan of it.
Miracles could be evidence if there was evidence for miracles. You know what I mean?
If there was evidence for miracles, like this guy tried to claim that like the heart that what their sample was from the blood was like a heart beating like half dead and half alive. I'm not sure what the measuring stick for that is.
That was weird. Sounds super weird, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not into it.
I don't know. It's just like I feel like if it was true, then like I would have to be a theist, but like at the same time, there's nothing like there's if the supernatural was taken to the natural world, then there would be like a that would make parades around and everybody would be theists. So
yeah. Seriously, it would be clear on the ground if there was actually evidence. It would be obvious, but here we are.
Yeah.
I'd also like to just shout out the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have something that doesn't have to be during the call.
Okay. Well, Michael, we're gonna go ahead and let you go. I hope that you'll call in again in the future,
right.
And I hope you have an awesome night.
Yeah, I got finals coming up.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
All righty. Well, take care. Bye.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
See you, Michael.
I was just saying, I want to shout out the I think like 2 or 3 now we've had theists who call in and wait in the queue for like 1 minute and then drop out. Yeah. You guys are the real heroes of your faith, showing the whole world that you are ready to pick up a phone for almost 2 minutes and say nothing to anybody. That'll really change some minds and hearts.
Yeah, I know. We've had so many call in that were like, oh yeah, theists, I want to talk about this, and then immediately drop. Like after they went through the entire screening process and everything like that. And then they're like, nah, I'm not that committed.
It sucks. And we also have like, it's annoying because we've also had at least 2 people that I saw that like our mods had to ban in the chat because they were just preaching in the chat. And we're like, hey, just freaking call, dude. And they're like, I can't because of this. I'm not going to call because of this. I didn't prepare for this. I didn't do this. It's like, you've spent more time explaining to us why you can't call than it would have taken to call. And then they had to get banned because they were just, spewing stuff. So like, it's just, man, it's deeply annoying. It's deeply annoying.
They were actually only timed out for a day.
Oh, they were only timed out. They didn't get banned. There you go. They just got a little bit of time to call. Like, hey, you don't have to type anymore. Now's your chance. And nothing. But it is close to the end of the show, so I believe lines are closed now.
Yeah, they are. I think that I was planning on taking Brian next there, but I do, I do want to re-emphasize the Patreon. Go to patreon.com/call the line if you want to help support us here and everything that we do. It would really help us out. Also, RFR this weekend. Don't forget to hit those notify things on the scheduled videos. We got one on Friday that's the pre-show, and then we've got Saturday that's the full charity stream. So definitely look out for that. There's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to be helping host that. I don't know if they're taking calls or not, or if it's just sort of like, everybody, talking or discussing different topics or whatnot. But anyways, let's I guess let's go to Brian over there. Brian,
hey, Forrest.
how's it going?
You know what? I'm actually having a pretty good night. Yourself?
I'm all right. I am curious. The pronouns you have listed. The pronouns you have listed here are me and you.
Yeah. You know what? I may have broken the Wheaton rule. The more polite thing probably would have been to say any.
Any. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I'm down with any.
But no. Okay. Here's the thing with me and you. You know what? When we're having a conversation, you know what? I'm going to refer to you as you, and it's me and you.
Right.
If you want to talk to John about me, frankly, I don't care. You can refer to me in any way that helps out with effective communication.
Sweet. Okay, I just wanted to. I'm fine with. I'm fine with any pronouns. If that's your preference, that's no big deal. I have several friends who use any pronouns as well. I just wanted to make sure that, because when I saw me, you, that was kind of unorthodox, and I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be some shit where we'd have to sit here and argue about pronouns, because I don't believe in pronouns. Here's two random ones,
Well, no, I mean, it was funny at the time, but now that I've been sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, wow, that didn't really need to be a dick.
No, you're fine. As long as you're not a dick, we can move forward. That's the whole thing.
Fair enough. Okay, so you know what? I caught this discussion between Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor over the weekend, and I get it. You're not Sam and Alex, but it kind of got me thinking about the whole is ought problem. That we can't make proclamations about morality. Do I have that correct?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by proclamations about morality. Like we can,
we can't dictate that you should. They use the hot stove analogy all the time. I can put my hand on a hot stove and learn that it's hot, and you shouldn't do that. But I shouldn't be able to tell you with any confidence or any rational reason that you ought not to touch the hot stove, or insert any moral hypothesis, or hypothetical you want.
Yeah. So the whole can't drive an ought from an is thing on face value is a really good thing to do. Is like saying okay, so I know that pick your favorite. Homosexuality exists in 1,500 animal species. I can say that is what is the case. I can't then say we ought to all be homosexual because of this case. Or even it wouldn't be a good argument to then make to say we ought to accept homosexuality because of that either. That's just a thing that exists.
But now that we've seen this in umpteen species, it's what we expect to see next. It's the next thing in the pattern.
We can use that ought to, or we can use that is to then build our framework where we get an ought out of. I usually have made that argument to say all right, we've seen it in at least many species, so you can no longer say it's unnatural, so we know that it's a natural thing, and now we can move forward with that understanding to decide whether or not we ought to be accepting of it. That's a thing, but we can't just say this is the case, therefore we ought to do that. But when you derive a little bit further from that with this thing of I can't tell somebody not to burn their hand, you're stretching the word ought, and it's going to get into this really weird semantic thing. And I disagree with whatever, I don't know, maybe you're paraphrasing what they said, but the way you presented it, I disagree. If I know the stove is hot, I'm going to tell people not to touch it. I'm not going to say it's morally wrong to touch it, but I'm going to say don't fucking do it.
Oh, no.
Right.
I've been sitting here smoking a joint while I was waiting in the queue. So I'm sure I screwed up paraphrasing what they stated.
Right.
You're fine.
Well, on the particular note of like, doing something that hurts you and then deriving some kind of moral conclusion from, whether or not, somebody should do that action. I've read Sam Harris's Moral Landscape, and he, pretty much bases a lot of his conclusions on like health. Like it's pretty easy to determine what is healthy, and deriving I guess morals from that, or moral conclusions from that. And so like in the situation of putting your hand on a stove, hold on 1 second, let me finish. Putting your hand on a stove, obviously that's going to degrade your health and all that kind of stuff. Like it's going to degrade, like you can easily measure that and come away with, oh, you ought not do that because it damages your health. And so like, but all of this kind of gets down to the point of, what is like your end goal that you're looking to reach with your moral foundation. And I feel like that is the real conversation as far as like, is ought and all this other stuff. Cause like you can say you ought not do these things, or you ought not do this thing, or you ought do this thing from your own personal perspective. It's very subjective, because it's subjective to what, or it's very relative to how you think it's best to accomplish whatever goal. And so like, I feel like the bigger conversation really exists, like as far as in the theist versus atheist sort of space, there is, like, well, on atheism or anything that's not theism, I feel like you're having to determine, what's that end goal that you want to accomplish, right? Whereas on the theist side, especially Christian side, you have one goal, that's to appease God. What's the best way to do that? Everybody has still their own subjective ideas about what's the best way to please God, and so like you still end up with two subjective ways to accomplish your goal. And so it really is just sort of makes it on an even playing field. This side's subjective, that side's subjective. One side is subjectively prescribing is or oughts or whatever. The other side is also doing the exact same thing. It's just that both sides have different end goals.
Okay. Well, I mean, here was my thought about all of this, was that we can scientifically look at it. I mean, I built my own moral framework by living life and experiencing things, witnessing others experience things. I've collected data. I can make a rationalization that stealing is bad, just based on the consequences, and not just for me, but for society. Do you know what I mean? I'm lucky enough to be raised in a society where they taught me to read. So yeah, I mean, I formed moral opinions, and it's all subjective, and you may look at a situation completely differently, and yeah, I mean, it just kind of is what it is.
Well, I mean, I think even like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. I monologue for a little bit there, so it's your turn.
Oh, you're fine. I have nothing particularly interesting to add to that, because I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's just like, yeah, that's the point of morality, in my opinion, is you explore, you learn, you ask questions, you meet new people and new cultures and new concepts and new understandings and new ways of life. And that's, there's a famous clip from Richard Dawkins talking about morality. He says, I don't want a divinely passed down morality. I want one that has been reasoned and argued and debated and thought out, and what you could call intelligently designed. And I love that very much, but like that's pretty good. And then like, right, but like even if somebody wants to say that it is definitely handed down by God, I think I mentioned this earlier on in this very show. Like, even if we can say for sure morality is handed down by God, that means that it's just God's opinion, which means it's still subjective. So like at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a objective morality, as far as I can tell. there's not even a possibility of one, because whoever wrote it down and then passed it down as an objective standard for all people also was a subject. And so, like, I don't know, man. It just it sounds like somebody trying to get out of doing any hard work about actually thinking about morality and just saying, well, I was told so.
But we all do collect the things that we incorporate into our code of morality.
Sure.
I mentioned the Wheaton rule earlier. That's a cornerstone of my moral framework. Will Wheaton, so you probably don't know the Wheaton rule. Will Wheaton, he was a Star Trek actor a while ago.
Yep, I know him.
Yeah,
I know of him. Not friends.
Yeah, he was, and I don't remember the circumstances, but the quote stuck to me, and it was simply just don't be a dick. And I try to kind of, not be a dick.
I think that's pretty much the best way to do it.
Yeah, and everybody has their own way of determining how best not to be a dick, and everybody's
or
have their own
right and wrong, and what they measure it against.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like in this is-ought problem that we started off with, I feel like on both sides, I guess this is what I was trying to say earlier, but maybe I didn't communicate it clearly. Both sides prescribe oughts. And so, whether an atheist prescribes oughts or a religious person prescribes oughts, they're both doing the prescribing subjectively. But I would say that there's probably, for somebody that is a little bit more, I guess, non-theistically minded about their moral foundation, I feel like that person has a greater chance of having like an evidence-based moral foundation. Like we have like evidence that teaching kids to read or teaching everybody to read is good for society. It produces a well-informed society and all this other stuff. And so you could make a good evidence-based argument for why it's good for everybody to have an education or to be able to read and all that. So, I mean, you could make evidence-based decisions about it, but I still feel like
here's a better one. Here's a better one. You know what? You want to cure poverty? Empower women. It's that simple. Empower women. We know it works. NGOs have tested it, in diverse populations around the world. Yet, we're not going to get there. Handing out low-cost or free IUDs prevents abortions. But, it ain't going to happen either. There's all kinds of
comprehensive sex education also works really well.
Sex education,
right?
Yeah. I mean, you're not a fan of abortions. You know what? I'd like to see them rare too. I don't want to see people have unnecessary procedures, or have to take unnecessary medications. Education is the cure to nearly everything, and yet we can't get behind that. Yet we know it works. I don't know.
Because an educated populace is difficult to control. So, it's not really in the ruling class's best interest.
Well, they don't think it's in their best interest.
Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to say there's some global, people in power are selfish and that's how they got to be in power.
Yes. And now they're in a position to influence the rules that benefit them. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just the way it's always been. The Vanderbilts, man. I'm sure they had, politicians here.
All right, you said on the call screen here, it says you had a particular moral hypothesis. Do you think we've covered it, or like?
Yeah, you did. Oh, hey, you know what? I wanted to actually add a side note to your phone call with Elijah. I just visited the newly reopened Yale Peabody Museum last week.
Oh, good.
And you know what? Just a great little natural history museum. Looks a lot smaller now that I'm visiting it as an adult. But they got a full-size Brontosaurus family. It's fun.
I'll go check it out. Sounds neat.
Yeah, visit a natural history museum if you can. They're fun.
Everybody should.
Okay, my friend. I hope you have a good night.
You too, dude.
And
Take care.
Thanks for the call.
All right. See you, Brian.
See ya.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for the calls tonight. Piggybacking off of what was just kind of discussed there, there's actually a natural history museum near or in the town that I grew up in, but they had a fantastic, like, small little museum, but there was an entire section dedicated to the biblical flood. So that's the area that I live in. I mean, it was a privately funded natural history museum, so obviously that they were putting all that in there. But anyways, so we do have super chats to get to, but I do want to emphasize for everybody the schedule that we've got coming up. Obviously tomorrow night, Tuesday 6 p.m. we've got Chewed Gum. Then on Wednesday it's the Hang Up. Thursday is Takis. Then we got the charity streams this weekend, so definitely check out the pre-show on Friday and the actual charity stream on Saturday. And then Sunday, we've got the regular Sunday show, and then the After Dark. And then, of course, next Monday is, of course, SkepTalk again. So I hope that everybody had an awesome night tonight. I know that I did. Forrest, I'm so sorry we didn't nab a theist for us to argue with.
It's all right.
So sometimes that's how it goes.
We had several almosts. We had a lot of almost. We had a few people almost call in. We had a few people almost stick around long enough to have us take their call. A bunch of theists almost did enough to actually have a conversation today.
Yeah, like people in the chat that are like, answers are found in Genesis. Maybe you should have called in and defended that. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a good thing to talk about. Yeah.
We had hours to do it. We were here.
Yeah.
Call back next time. I flipped, dude. He just read the schedule. Like we're gonna be on several more times.
Yeah. So our first super chat here is from Dylan Flynn for $4.99 saying, "Dear Forrest, could you recommend a book about the evolution of plants from single cells?"
I don't have one on hand. That's at the very beginning of the show. If you'll recall, I said I just saw a super chat and I'm looking something up. That's what it was. And I found this one on the Amazon. It's called "How the Earth Turned Green: A Brief 3.8 Billion Year History of Plants." It's got okay ratings. It looks pretty solid. I just added that to my cart. Again, I've never read it. I have no idea, but like it looked neat to me. So I'm going to check that guy out. And it looks like there's no history or anything about the author, but I'll look into that as well. See, who this author is and what their credentials are, because maybe this is written by some freaking herb. No, he's a professional botany at Illinois State University. So it's written by Dr. Joseph E. Armstrong, professor of botany at Illinois State. I'm going to buy that and read that someday, because I don't have a good book about plant evolution, and I would like to.
You want to read this one
€5?
first?
Sure, yeah. We can switch back and forth. $5 fake from Ektril Poe. Good name. I have a question about taxonomy. When we discover extraterrestrial life, will we need to create another taxon of life? So like when you talk about taxonomy, some people, myself included, include life as a part of the tree. Because that way it separates from like things that aren't technically alive, like viruses. I just like to do that. It's redundant and stupid. I just kind of like to do it as to make a point. But even people like me would need to then change, because like, what kind of life are you talking about? Are you talking about Earth life? Are you talking about whatever else life? So yeah, if we were to find extraterrestrial life, I'm betting they'd be carbon based, and I'm betting they'd be made of one or more cells, because that's like the most logical thing. But beyond that, we'd probably have to make a whole new clade just for those guys, a whole new phylum, not even a whole new phylum, a whole new like something before domain to go in there, because otherwise we would tangle them up into our family tree.
Mm-hmm. All right, next we've got $5 from RC Dasheen. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm horrible at pronouncing names.
It's RCD Esheen.
D Esheen. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Forrest. always wanted to ask, what's Roland's favorite Subway sandwich?
The sandwiches in your heart are the ones that matter most to him. I mean, that not only like to be like pretty, but also like clogged arteries, y'all. Atherosclerosis is a real thing. $5 from ugh. I would love to watch Forrest play Spore. I would also love that. I think he would hate. I mean, love it. Am I right or am I right? Yeah, it would be both. But I have a ton of fun with it. It's just a matter of like whether or not I will ever have free time. But I do think it would be fun someday. You know, whenever I pile yet another thing on my plate to do, like maybe some Twitch streaming. That'd be interesting. I think Matt does that. I would have fun with it. It just is a matter of if I ever get around to doing that, or if I ever have like, you know, the time and capacity to figure that out.
Yeah, Forrest, do you know about a game called I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like it's called something Ancestors, and basically you can play through like human evolution.
Hell yeah,
like
I've heard of something like that.
Yeah, I cannot
I've
for the
heard
life
of
of
something
me.
like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I played it one time on my channel, and I was not good at evolving. I'm a poor atheist in that.
It's
regard.
tough. It's tough to do.
Yeah. Oh, let's see, $5 from Radori768, who says, "What do you think of the idea of religion as social technology? It feels like it's used the same way angry atheists used to."
Religion is a domestication tool for humans, and it always has been.
Yeah, it's definitely been a control method for a lot of places, but I don't know about calling it social technology. Like that seems to be a weird way to title it, but yeah. I don't know.
I could vibe with that. It's just it is a weird word, but like if that's what you were calling it, I could maybe we're coming from different angles, but I would vibe with that title to say that it is a technology to control social dynamics. Like that's what that's for.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't have a reason to say that it's wrong. It reminds me of NXIVM. Have you heard about that cult? Yeah, because the guy that ran NXIVM, he was like, this is tech, but it was really just like self-help groups and stuff, and so it just, I don't know, it seemed weird to me.
$10 hard-earned dollars from Get Stanfield. Get Stanfield where? Hey, Forrest and Godless Engineer. Is there sufficient evidence to support the theory of Luca? That's the last universal common ancestor. How can I explain to someone inquiring about the one ancestor for all life forms? Thank you. So Luca is a theoretical thing, but it's kind of one of those things where, like, obviously we don't have a fossil for Luca, but we know that all life on Earth as it currently is right now all like shares the same like structure and function. And so you trying to show us a Luca tattoo? Oh, it's just a Darwin. Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
right there.
Yeah.
Luca,
yeah,
I guess.
Because we all use the same DNA in the same way. Like there's like there are some viruses that use RNA as genetic material, but there's not a single like living thing that doesn't use DNA the exact same way as every other living thing. And so like it's generally understood that like that would mean that we all share one common ancestor. Now it doesn't mean that Luca was the first thing to ever be alive or the only thing at that time that was alive. It's just that's the one thing that differentiated into the rest of us. If you want to check out like real like detailed discussions of that, I encourage you to check out the field of astrobiology, especially the astrobiology primer from NASA, which I've promoted on the show several times. It's free, it's easy to read. But in terms of like, you know, if you're trying to debate this or someone who's maybe a creationist, Luca's going to be a hard one to get across until they understand like the rest of evolution. But yeah, it's a pretty cool deal. It's just it's kind of a theoretical framework for like there. If we know for sure that every single pick any two taxa and they share a common ancestor, therefore all taxa must share a common ancestor. It's kind of like just a logical extension of that. And it also is it also goes with the evidence that we have about how all life shares the same cellular mechanisms, and so we must have all gotten them in the same place.
Yeah. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter says, Theists, science is changing. God's word never changes. Atheists, we learn new things. That's why the Bible has slaves. Theists, they didn't know better.
God just put that in there to train us.
Yeah. I mean, that's one route that they could go. Like they didn't know better or whatnot. They could also have an apologetic that establishes slavery as good on occasion. They could, like, there's so many different outs that they have for explaining that. And I know that some of the more particular worse ways is to like actually justify keeping somebody as a slave. Or there's just basically lying about what's in the Bible. That's another route that they can take. So there's just so many different ways that they can lie about it.
Have Elijah listen to that. You talk about theists dodging questions. Boy, have we had it on that one. Absolutely. That's not real slavery. It's not like American slavery. Oh, well, because God couldn't just ban something that the whole world was doing. He had to teach us how to do it better until we stopped doing it. Well, he knew that it would be abolished later on anyway. He wanted us to do it rather than giving us the commandment. He wanted us to be strong enough to do it. So he just guided us. God was guiding our hand for thousands of years, making sure that we finally came to his moral standard of not keeping slaves. Well, you have to understand that in that time it was different because it blah, 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 blah. 10 whole fucking dollars from Mahalia, who I love, has actually clarified that it is Yaga here. That is a double L sound. That is a Y sound. Anyway, Mahalia says, I love Forrest, but let's hear from John. At what level would AI need to reach for it not only to be considered sentient, but for the theist to feel it has a soul and it needs to be saved? That's a good question.
Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know if we'll ever actually develop AI that's at the level of sentience. Like, I forget what that particular point, like in our technological future is. There's a phrase for it, but I can't remember it right now. I mean, it's definitely. Yeah. It's that sounds about right. But I would think that you would need a vastly more complex, like system, because like the AI that you have now is really they're large language models, and so they're heavily dependent on the information that you feed them, how you set them up, and everything like that. They don't independently think. Obviously, they just repeat back, stuff that it's been trained to respond with, and so like there's no real innovation there as far as like having it be sentient. I would think that in order to consider it sentient, it would need to be able to make its own decisions. And I mean, there's definitely branches of like engineering and all that that's trying to do that. That's trying to develop these very complex neural networks and even larger language models than the ones that are readily accessible to us today. But if you consider like the amount of complexity that goes into what the human brain does, I just don't know I think that our technology would have to significantly advance in order for that to like become a thing. I don't think that it would have to advance all that much for like a Terminator 2 situation, because then it's not necessarily that it has to be sentient. It just has to, I guess, develop in a certain way that it identifies humans as a threat, and then even the large language model could figure out a way to take out humans. It's just a matter of how much we allow the AI to have control of. And I think that's the real threat if you were to identify a threat, because like ChatGPT is not going to replace people. I don't know if y'all have played around with ChatGPT, but I regularly use it in order to like generate a lot of descriptions that in order to save me time because I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff. I'm a one man show over on my channel, and so I that's what I use it for, and it's definitely not going to replace like anything anytime soon. None of the AI stuff that I've seen has the potentiality yet to like whole replace people. But then again, I'm not all that deeply intertwined into that area of like software and computer development. Right now, currently, I'm working on like Android tablet code and writing stuff in that area. So not anything AI oriented. I'm very interested in what we can do with AI as a tool and how it can help us save time and how it can help people like learn to do things. Because like if I need to know something and I don't want to scrounge around Google in order to figure it out by reading different different technology stacks that exists out there, like the stack exchanges. If I don't want to like go through all that and read all that, I can type it in and I can figure it out from like Chat GPT. And it doesn't always work as it discusses through Chat GPT, but it is at least a good starting point to where you can actually figure out what you need to. So like AI is a tool to help you in your daily life to either cut time from tasks that would normally take you a lot of time and all this other stuff like that. I feel like that's where the usefulness in AI comes in. Not to worry about sentience just yet. It would have to be way more complex. And I really don't think, knowing religious people, they definitely would never consider like robots or anything like that to be sentient to the point where they need Jesus or they need to be saved or anything like that. I mean, currently we're having trouble getting like conservatives and fundamentalists to just accept that like women and trans people are actual people that deserve respect. I think that thinking about AI sentience is way in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Love that.
All right, next is $10 from Storm Chaser Noah. That sounds like a fun occupation, Storm Chaser. But anyways, I'm gonna go see Twisters this summer. Sorry, my ADHD brain is getting out there. Anyways, fun fact about eye surgery about using old science to operate on eyes. They used obsidian scalpels for such a long time due to the properties.
Yeah,
that sounds good. I know obsidian can get really sharp.
Obsidian can be ridiculously sharp. If you use the same amount of pressure that you would use with a steel scalpel with an obsidian scalpel, you'll fucking bisect somebody. Like, it is absurd. And there are surgeons today that prefer it for a variety of things, but you have to be practiced with it. You need a specific technique when you're using obsidian because it is absurdly sharp, and also you're not going to break off a little chip of a regular metal scalpel that will then continuously cut away inside that person forever. So like you have to be very careful with obsidian scalpels. But yeah, no, they're a thing. Did you hear the bread joke? It's pretty crummy. Thanks, Jonathan. That was worth $5. I like
it. I love dad jokes. 13 Narnia dollars from Chrysalakar Res Zirconium.
How dare
some
you
kind of
say that to me.
emoji object. I just cast a spell. You are both very well spoken and your videos are awesome. Appreciate the work you put in. One of the worst things I've seen is children being told to repeat lines from the Bible at 5 years old. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Go ahead, Forrest.
Oh no, I was gonna say like I feel the same way. Like one of the things that led me to not be super into like being more anti-religion was like working at like a boys and girls club once and having people like teaching the children like singing little songs about beating Satan's face and shit. I'm like, this is what the fuck are you doing, dude? It's wild.
Yeah. And one of the most infuriating clips that I've ever seen is of this woman who's got her homeschooled kids with her, and she talks about how smart her kids are. And so, like, the reporter's like, "Oh yeah, well, what's 2 plus 2?" And the girl doesn't know, and like just going through basic math is like, no, she's got all the way through numbers memorized or some kind of thing like that. And it's like they view education as having the Bible memorized, and instead of like actual practical knowledge that kids need. I mean, I guess at least they can read because they can memorize the Bible, but you need more than that in order to function in society. I mean, personally, I think. 5. Oh, wait, is it my turn to read or yours?
I think it might be mine. I don't know. 5 ass dollars from Sonic Shroom. If I want to burn my hand, then I just have to touch hot things. If I don't want to burn my hand, then I ought not touch hot things. I mean, that really is the long and short of it. That's kind of it.
Yeah. No, don't bring your subjective shit in here, Sonic. $10 from Daniel Schreiner, who says, Forrest, is it possible to induce a genetic immunity in an individual against viruses? How does or would that mechanism work?
So I'm not going to get into immunology too hard because we will be here all night, but long and short, you have innate immunity that you're born with. There's a reason why you don't get parvo, which is a virus that affects dogs. It all comes down to what you have to have certain cell receptors to be able to accept that virus. That's why viral proteins are always changing and evolving to be able to get into your cells better. So if you are born without the ability for a virus to adhere to you, then it's not going to work. Those are the 4 stages of pathogenesis: exposure, adhesion, invasion, and infection. Exposure is just being around the fucking thing. Adhesion is it being able to get into your body. Invasion is it actually penetrating and getting into your cells. And then infection is when it replicates itself inside of you. And so if it can't even adhere, if it's not going to be able to get into your body and actually interact with your cells, you're fine. So yes, you could eventually evolve genetic immunity against just about anything. It's just a matter of that's why viruses are also evolving. That's why you need a new flu shot every year, because you're in what we call this Red Queen loop of evolving defense, and then this thing evolves past your defense, and then you evolve new defense, and then it evolves past your defense over and over and over.
I could just hear the conspiracy theorist nuts heads exploding over this. $4.99 from Jason, who says, Tooth Bunny.
Hate it. I can't wait for the match. Did you see yesterday's show?
No, I didn't. I wasn't able to catch it. No.
Yeah. Eric, I don't ever watch anything from this fucking channel either. But Eric was, we were talking about the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and everything like that. And he misspoke and said Tooth Bunny and created a meme. And so now this has become this thing that we do. We just ran with the rest of the show. One of our mods bought me this fucking horrific looking evil rabbit mask that's going to be in my P.O. box soon that I can wear on a stream. The Tooth Bunny wants your teeth, and he's going to get them. The Tooth Bunny is coming for your fucking teeth. Floss. Protect yourself. $5 from Philip Kelly. Have you read is it Nessa Carey Junk DNA book? As a software developer, if 99% of my code did nothing, I would be out of a job. Junk DNA isn't actually junk DNA. It just does it did shit that we didn't know. And so for example, you have introns and exons in your when you have a gene, you code for you've got your DNA here, you write RNA that comes out of there. The RNA that you just copy out of there isn't good enough because you have chunks of the genes called introns and chunks called exons. And you've got to cut out all those introns and then splice everything, all the exons back together. And then you have a mature piece of mRNA that can actually do a thing. So there's all these little sections in there that don't do what the gene's supposed to do. And we're like, okay, so this is junk DNA. It's not doing anything. And so we would actually go into a lab and cut all these sections of the DNA out and see hey, maybe gene expression will happen faster now that you're skipping this step. And yes, it does. But then a bunch of other shit down the line goes wrong in other parts of the body that we didn't expect. And so it turns out all these junk DNA things are actually regulatory things for other things that we just didn't understand yet. So is it possible that we actually have junk DNA? Yeah, pseudogenes exist. But a lot of the, when people say like 99% of your DNA doesn't do anything, it's not even close. Not even close, dude. A lot of your DNA does stuff that we just don't realize. And we're learning, especially in the past like 10, 20 years, like which one's which. Let me double check, because I always get introns and exons mixed up. And I'm going to double check and make sure I said the right one. Yeah, intron. Yes, the introns are the part you cut out and you've spliced the exons together. Hell yeah. I messed that up so many times, dude. I've been messing that up for years. And every time I think I get it wrong and I get a mnemonic device and I try to do it right, I actually fucking get it wrong. So like, hell yeah. I'm very tired and I've been streaming for a minute and I fucking remembered what introns were. Woo.
Yeah, and as a software dev too, on my end, I know that what you have to do with your code is you have to build it to where if you take out any one part, it all falls to shit and you can't fix it. That's called job security. Now we got five whatever that is. I think that's francs or pounds. No, that's pounds. That's not francs. Pounds from The Cake is a Lie. I love that meme from I believe that too. Started with Half-Life.
Portal. Same company, different game.
Portal. Right.
$5 more from you have to play Spore, Forrest. I would like to. I really think you would like it or hate it. I don't know. Entertainment. I'm down. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. I'm just saying that I'm incredibly busy and very tired. That's what I'm saying.
Also, they said entertainment, and I'm not sure what that is, but it's probably tangentially related to entertainment. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter says Forrest told me to look up trypanosomes. Did I say that correct?
Yeah, okay. Trypanosomes. Trypanosomes.
Okay. He said I'd never sleep again. First fact I learned about trypanosomes causes sleeping sickness. Come on.
Yeah, dude. They're horrific. They're terrifying little dudes. This is an intro to animal parasitology. You get good at them, and you get good at what are the other ones that freak me the fuck out? I'll think of it at 2 a.m. and have a nightmare about it. There are some major groups in animal parasitology where you're just like, oh, it's one of these again. I guess I'm gonna die stupidly. They're all freaky as hell, dude. I love them. Hey, that was it.
All right.
We're done with the things.
Yeah, that's all we got. Really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thank you so much to everybody that helped. Thank you to the call screener tonight. Thanks to our producer, Morgan, for helping us get all of this stuff done. And thanks to just everybody out there that's watching. You guys are awesome. And I guess we will see everybody later on this week through all the shows that we got planned. So if you are a theist and you didn't get your call in for whatever reason, you're going to have several more chances to talk with some people from here from the line. Also, don't forget, we have RFR this weekend. We have the pre-show on Friday and the charity stream on Saturday. So definitely hit those notify buttons on those streams. And I guess we will just see all of you heathens later.
Also, to Ron in the chat at the last second coming in with the God watch over everybody. You could have fucking called. There were thousands of people watching. You could have changed some minds. You blew it, dude. You blew it.